listeners and artists. Far-Fetched is an upcoming independently produced animated pilot co-created by Ashley Nichols and Dave Capdevielle. Ashley is also known for her work as a cleanup lead on the Hazbin Hotel pilot and the Lackadaisy short film. We invited Ashley onto our stream to discuss the production process behind Far-Fetched and her experience creating a pilot episode. So, Ashley, welcome to the stream.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, to start, why don't we talk about what your career path into animation was like?
So this is going to be a common theme throughout like everything we probably talk about today. I am a huge internet child. I started on DeviantArt drawing Danny Phantom fan art and I transitioned to YouTube where I started making a bunch of like fan animations for Steven Universe cuz I just wanted to learn animation and I figured what better way to learn than through like making fan work for something that I love. And through that, I just started to look at like job listings on Twitter and stuff for people who are just like, "Hey, I need an animator." And I just scurried and cobbled together a little reel and I was like, "Please hire me. I have no idea what I'm doing, but please." And somebody was foolish enough to hire me. So that was kind of my in through the gate and I have mainly just done a lot of online indie projects, but I have done industry work for a DreamWorks TV show called Too Loud, and also I worked on Animaniacs as a cleanup artist, and those were incredibly cool. But my heart very much lies with online indie animated content, and all of this is to say I have no formal schooling, revealing my greatest darkest secret.
Yeah, well, it's really cool that you were able to get those productions. I know Nico Colello is a really fun person to work with.
Mhm.
Um, for viewers who may not have seen the teaser trailer for your pilot, how would you describe Far-Fetched?
We kind of jokingly in like a one sentence description kind of describe Farfetch as Scooby Doo meets Resident Evil. It's a horror comedy about a girl who unleashes her own chaotic canine creature. And right as she's starting to get her adult life together, uh, unleashes this weird cryptid from her mind, as well as gets dragged into by her childhood best friend, a crazy rock emo band. And because of this new creature that she's kind of that's been brought into her life, Kira, this weird purple dog, she has been thrust into the world of the supernatural as it's just been drawn to her. And also it doesn't help that the leader of the band wants to film in abandoned campsites that are infected with monsters. So it's a very nostalgic look at like surviving to the late 2000s, as well as kind of being a late bloomer adult and trying to figure yourself out while life just won't stop. So we focus a lot on monsters and horror, but also a lot of comedy aspects too, because comedy and horror for some reason just seem to go hand in hand with each other.
I also know too that there are a lot of people who are very hungry for animated horror.
Yeah, it's honestly that's kind of a big reason why I wanted to like do this is animated horror and animated monsters is something you don't see anywhere near enough of. Like, I love Gendy Tartakovsky's Primal, but that's like there's monsters, but it's more like dinosaurs and stuff like that. And I was just like, I want werewolves, I want vampires, I want swamp creatures, I want kaijus. Like, I want to see that in animation because we can. It's it's always the worst thing you could say, but you can do anything, quote unquote, in animation. But like to a degree without killing your team. That is true. And I'm like, I want to experiment with that. I want to explore that because that's just something I want to see. And my co creator, Dave, is also a huge horror fan. So it was not hard at all getting him onto the project.
It is always fun when writers, and it's usually writers, who will say in animation we can do anything.
Hmm.
Um, except have like multiple incidental characters in the background all move at the same time.
I've my co-creator is basically my writer, and he's done the we can do anything in animation. I'm like, no, no honey, no, honey, come here. No, come, no, that crowd shot you. Come here. We're gonna have a talk. Come here. And
Well,
it's
what are
so
some
it's
things that are like difficult to do in animation just for reference?
I mean, if people can see my screen share right now, I'm a hypocrite and gradients are a pain. And I was like, hey, what if we made one of our main characters have a gradient through his hair? Wouldn't that be great? And my whole team looked at me and they're like, Ashley, why? But no, like another like crowd shots, tons of characters, because you've got to remember every piece of animation is like at least usually 20, 30 drawings, and you've got to do whole new drawings for every single character and keep track of their references and details. And it's a lot of logistics and a lot of time. And so yes, technically anything is possible, but it's just like, do we want to take 5 years to make this, or do we want to take a year, you know?
So I wanted to ask you, Ashley, how long have you been developing Farfetched, and how have the concepts, designs, and characters evolved throughout the development process?
So I have had Farfetched since I was a wee tiny baby child when I was 12 years old. Rue and Kira, the two main characters, started out as well, Rue started out as a very different character. Kira has stayed basically the same since I was 12, and that's very intentional. In fact, I've got some old art here to show this. I drew this when I was probably like 12 or 13. Like I've had these babies for a very long time. And Rue used to be called Vicky, and then she was called Lucia. She's gone through a ton of change, but Kira has always been my little sparkle dog baby that I've just had forever. And back in around like I drew them a bit when I was like 12, and then I kind of dropped them, but back around like 2015, I was just like, "Oh, I remember this character that I had that was really cute. I want to bring her back for fun, you know? I want to like play around with her, like try and like reuse a character from when I was super young and like, see like what I could do with her." And that kind of started leading to thinking more about like, oh, what if I gave her a story? Oh, what if I brought back Vicky back then, now Rue, and like what if, they like how would having this creature like affect her life and stuff like that. And so it just kind of kept evolving and evolving over the years as just kind of like a little like pet side project that I had, just because it was something really like fun and comforting and nostalgic for me, because it came from such a like genuine place when I was 12 of just, yeah, I want to make a dog and she's purple and she's got hair. I don't know why she has hair, but she has hair. And so it just kind of it just stuck with me. And I can't explain exactly why, but like recently I just got a folder from my parents' old house, and all their old stuff. I got my folder back of my old drawings from when I was 12, and I still have some of the original like drawings of Kira from when I was 12 years old. Like I said Danny Phantom was going to be a running theme here. You can see the Danny Phantom in this. Like these characters have just stuck with me for a long time. And it feels like a cop out answer to say I don't know why, but I don't know, sometimes things just kind of stick with you. And so that then led to me being like, okay, I now have like a lot of experience working on these productions. I want to actually start making this. And so we started getting into Hell Puppy, and then everything spiraled out of control from there, basically.
So one of the concepts with Farfetched and Hell Puppy is this idea of you have this animal, and there might be something a little bit otherworldly, inexplicable
Mhm.
about it. Did you grow up with a dog or a cat?
I mean, I clean my room, but if you had seen it earlier, there we have a cat tree just on the other side of that wall. We've got dog toys and a dog bed, and like this room is just usually filled with stuff for my pets. So I've always grown up with a ton of pets, and I still everybody says I have a zoo right now, and I'm like, I only have two cats and two dogs. That's normal, right? Right? And everybody's like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, okay. Cause like I grew up with like chickens and a turtle and bunnies and dogs and cats and like just everything because I grew up on an apricot orchard, funny enough. I grew up on a farm working the apricot orchard, so we had a ton of animals just always around. And so yeah, just it's always been just a part of my life.
Do you find that like animals, because they can be very affectionate and very cuddly, but they can also sort of have this like nature to them where they'll do something inexplicable, and you just sort of look at them and wonder, why did you do that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like they're just it's funny because you think, "Oh, they're an animal," but then every now and again they pull something on you and it's like, you're a tiny person in there, I know it. Speak to me." But yeah, like that's definitely something that we wanna, like, play on is in the show, is just like, "Oh, you're just a dog," and then suddenly they do something like Kira does something, like, hyper intelligent or way out of left field, and it's just like, "Uh, what what are you?" You know, mixed with the fact that she's a weird horror amalgamate and can turn into a terrifying, monstrous creature, but
We'd like to give our viewers a peek at some of the work that went into the pilot for Farfetched.
yeah, absolutely. So as you saw in the beginning, I grabbed one of my shots, and for those who watch my live streams, you're probably a little bit familiar with this shot because this is the one that I spent hours and hours on meticulously figuring out our cleanup pipeline and everything. But so of course we use Toon Boom for all of our cleanup animation, and my job mainly has been being a cleanup lead. So I very much have been very like commandeering over that aspect of production. But we started with some lovely animation by Circe, one of our animators. She is super super talented, and my job was to basically take this and go, okay, this needs to be the standard for how all of our cleanup and everything looks. So I probably spent way too long on this shot in particular. But yeah, we took that animation. Let me pop out these. And I spent God knows how long making sure all of the line art on this bad boy was absolutely perfect. And yeah, then just color and then I don't I don't understand how the node tree works yet. It is a dark magic to me that still scares me. Um, but yeah, a lot of my job in particular, that I, like, spent the most time on was taking animation into cleanup because that's just the part that I'm super obsessed with, and then we handled all of our, like, compositing and stuff in After Effects, and it's all honestly was a massive blur, and it's a process that I kinda wanna completely gut and start over again and refigure out the pipeline because if I'm being 1000% honest, a lot of the cleanup and the animation or not animation, but a lot of the cleanup and compositing was all completed within, like, 48 hours before we put the teaser clip out because we were like, "We have to put this out now. We have to put this out now." This was our internal deadline, which was very foolish. Um, but we're like, "We have to do this. This is the deadline that we set." And so there's a lot about the process, specifically this latter half that I want to like completely gut and redo. And I'm probably going to be doing all of it myself because I don't want to put that on my team. But yeah, the pipeline for figuring out how to make things run totally smoothly is still very much something that I'm learning and developing like as we go along.
Yeah, I wanted to say too that the trailer for the pilot looks absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you, thank
And
you.
I wanted to ask you too, like, so cleanup animation, ink and paint is something that has historically been very undervalued in
Mhm.
the animation industry, despite the fact that it is what people see when they watch an animated production, right? You don't see the rough
Mhm.
animation; you see um, the ink and paint, the cleanup, because that's the final lines on the screen. Do you feel that that can have a really big impact on the final production?
Absolutely. It's cleanup's job is possibly one of, in my opinion, as somebody who's done every step of the process and worked through every step of the process, cleanup is, I wouldn't say one of the hardest, but definitely probably the most time consuming aspect. And it's very, very easy to take a gorgeous piece of animation and absolutely just spoil it, basically, if you're not careful, because you have to keep in mind, like, the, like, original animator's intent and, like, where they wanted to go with the piece and why they place certain lines where they wanted to, or why certain lines might need to be changed or corrected, because they, you know, were on a deadline. They were rushed, so maybe there were certain elements that might need a little touch-ups and fixing. So it's of what I, like, tell people is if they wanna get into, like, animation, I tell them a really good way to start learning is actually doing cleanup, because it really forces you to, like, study and learn from the animators whose work you're working with. And so I spend hours and hours and hours making sure all of my lines are, like, totally clean and perfect, because it's so easy to, like, miss one line and have the, like, size on the line change slightly, and then it starts to sputter, and then that distracts you from the fluidity of the motion, and it's this is the process that I am very obviously very obsessed with. But yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, it's a very
definitely
collaborative process too.
Mhm. It's definitely a very underappreciated, like, aspect of production, like, something that I've noticed now as, like, working as cleanup, it's an aspect of production I often don't even see get credited, like, in the credits.
Mm.
Like, usually it's just animators and then maybe compositors, and then that's it. And I'm like, "Where's the cleanup team? I know they existed. Did they just blip out of existence before the show was done? Like, what happened?" Um, so yeah, it's very, very rewarding yet frustrating when it comes to, like,
Yeah.
getting to the final product.
I think also looking at something like the work that you did on Lackadaisy, where it very clearly has a huge impact on the aesthetic of
Mhm.
the production, that it should be something that people see as very important.
Yeah, yeah,
And
like, I was a cleanup lead on Lackadaisy, and so part of that was figuring out how to translate, like, the Xerox, like, concepts and stuff that they had for it into a pipeline that works in a vector program like Toon.
so if you just have the drawing, that doesn't necessarily get you something that you can repeat for every frame of
Exactly.
animation that needs to be.
Yeah,
No,
a
that's
cohesive pipeline that everyone can follow.
so, you did mention too that like this character has a gradient in his hair.
Mhm.
What were some of the things that you did to sort of problem solve some of the issues that that could create while that character's moving?
I I'm I'm a bad showrunner, and my problem solving was, "Hey, everybody who's doing cleanup shots on Quinn, don't worry about his hair. Just give the shot to me when you're done and I'll do." I that is something that I'm still learning and figuring out, and I have learned and figured out a lot since then. And what we're probably gonna end up doing for the future is, instead of a gradient, which is so hard to make not jitter and everything, like, yeah, you can see how I felt about the process in my margin doodles. Um, but it's very difficult to not get a gradient to, like, shift around and jitter, because it's a gradation of color, there's not exact pixels to track or anything like that. And I was like, I'll just do a gradient and it to me it's fine. And as we started going through the teaser clip, I was like, "It's not fine. Oh no, it's not fine. What do I do?" And so I went and I started looking more into like different compositing tools and different ways other productions handle it. And so what we're going to do in the future is it is just going to be 3 bands of color that we then just smooth out in After Effects later during the compositing stage. That way it's a lot easier to keep track of, and I won't have to go, "Here, cleanup team, just give me Quinn's hair. I'll take all of it. I'm sorry." A lot of my and this is bad, don't do this. A lot of my problem solving so far has amounted to, "I messed up. I'll figure it out. You don't worry about it, team. I got this."
Well, speaking of like problem solving and showrunners, you've worked on a number of ambitious independent productions,
Mhm.
including Lackadaisy, Hazbin Hotel, Ollie and Scoops. What drew you to working on those kinds of productions?
So, I mean, like I said before, I've always just been a bit of an internet child. I was a huge fan of Vivzy and Tracy with Lackadaisy. And Ollie and Scoops was very reminiscent of a lot of like old school, like 90s cartoons. It was super fun. And also, I had worked with Nico previously on Too Loud, and he is a fantastic showrunner, super kind, great to work for. But specifically with Lackadaisy and Has Been, like Viv's Die Young animation was one of like the first like huge like pieces of like gorgeous, fully completed, like, animation, all done by one person that at least I had seen, and I was like, "Oh, whoa, maybe I can do animation. Maybe, oh, maybe it's possible." And so, like, when I saw that, like, she was hiring, and then I saw Lackadaisy was looking for people, I was like, "Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in." Like, you guys were so, like, fundamental to, like, shaping my interests and my dreams and my goals that I would just I would be dumb not to want to get involved, you know?
And would you say that your experience working on those independent productions had an influence on your approach to your pilot?
Yeah, absolutely. Since I really don't have a ton of industry experience, mainly my experience is through working on independent projects. So working on those shows was really formative in like helping me figure out exactly how a production pipeline works, or like how to best communicate with people, and like what ways to organize a team online. Like my show has been hell of a Lackadaisy. We all like work through Discord servers, and all work collaboratively through there, so we have a bunch of different channels for like animation cleanup, or goofing off and stuff like that. It's crew bonding. And the people at Lackadaisy in particular, Fable and Tracy, have been just incredibly supportive and kind. And whenever I have questions like, "Hey, how do I take things from like storyboards to animation in the smoothest way possible? Help." They have been incredibly kind and like sitting me down and going like, "Okay, this is how you should organize like your pipeline," or like, "Here's ways you can improve. Here's how you can better write up like guides and stuff like that." And it's been a massive help that like, you know, uh, they've been so willing to like help other projects along.
I really love that creators like Nico and Tracy and Fable are very open about their creative processes
Mhm.
and sharing how they put together their projects. And it kind of reminds me of like the really, really early days of animation, where um, oh geez, I said his name in the pre conversation. Um, but
Oh, no,
the
now
idea
you
of like,
can't
hey, if
remember, of
anyone,
course.
I know, of course, now I can't remember, but the idea that, well, in the early days of animation of like, well, why don't you patent the, the process? Well, if
Mhm.
anyone wants to draw 24 frames a second, they're welcome to have at it.
You're welcome to suffer. It's fine. I wish to bring the suffering on other people as well. I don't wanna save it just for me. But yeah, no,
And
it's incredibly cool that, like,
Windsor
especially
McKay.
Windsor McKay, okay. It's incredibly cool that, like, indie people online have been so open with their process to help new creators, like, figure out what they're getting themselves into, basically. And I think that's because we, as indie creators, all appreciate those who helped us learn early on. Like, in the pre-show, I talked a little bit about, like, how Cubum Lee, his tutorials on Toon Boom is really I honestly owe my career to him, for helping, like, demystify, like, the process and everything for me and get me started in Toon Boom. He's in his Toon Boom tutorials were just so instrumental in, like, getting me not so scared of the program and, like, diving on in and then learning more and more and more, and so I think and I wanna do this as well, like, indie creators, we want to help spread our knowledge too, because the more other people grow, the more that we grow too.
I also think that there was a really collaborative spirit that to the online art community just before YouTube started with
Mhm,
places like DeviantArt and
mhm.
Newgrounds, where this idea that hey, we have the tools to make animation and art, um, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was very much we figured a lot of us online kids figured out, "Oh, we can't do this alone. I love my friends a lot. Hey, friend, help me with this. Like, let's work together." That when you have all of the energy in the world as a kid, you're like, "Yeah, yeah, I want to make everything. I want to make it with the people I love and care about. Let's make cool stuff." And just it helped foster early on this very collaborative and like fun creative mindset that now has transitioned into adults who know how to handle money and resources going, "Hey, maybe I can make, like, a big cool thing that I've wanted to do forever now."
Do you feel that there's growing demand for shows with genres, themes, structure, and characters just outside of those typically featured in studio productions?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for there is something out there that will speak to someone. In fact, there's something anything out there is probably going to speak to a large number of people because people's interests and what they wanna see are so diverse, and I feel like a lot of us are very, very tired of seeing like the same safe things that studios want to greenlight because they know there's an audience for it. But if you bring them something weird and crazy that's never been seen before, I don't honestly blame them for being like, We don't know who's going to watch this. No, we're not making it." And it's like, but please risk your millions of dollars on my weird thing. I would appreciate it very much. But yeah, now given, like, the resources and stuff, a lot of people are able to create stories that would never be greenlit and very diverse, interesting stories about, like, very specific experiences people have had or weird, wacky, out there, crazy concepts about, like, time travel and, like, space and, like, weird monsters or, like, abstract things that I wouldn't even be able to begin to, like, explain or weird booze cats that, bootleg in the 1920s or a show about a girl and her purple sparkle dog, things that definitely I would see struggling to find, a network are now being able to have their voices heard, and I think that allows for people to be able to absorb a much more diverse array of ideas and content, and that's just so much more enriching than the same superhero show for the 50th time.
I think that what's really heartening is that occasionally those shows do get made and you do see them find an
Mhm,
audience, and there's just this I'd almost say like a dam just breaks in terms of the amount of support. Like there's
mhm,
just this huge unmet demand,
mhm,
and then it takes over Twitter for a good
mhm,
2 months, and you see like our flag means death
mhm.
character fan art constantly, and I love seeing that. I love seeing people see things and discover things that they really love that they wouldn't have seen before.
Yeah, exactly, and, like, things like that getting so big, like, just go to prove, like, people are looking for new, diverse, weird, crazy things to watch, or something very different manages to eke through, and it does develop an audience, and then it gets canceled after 2 seasons, and it's just like, "No, why?" Which is why I
You
really,
gotta,
really want to push for, like, creators to have more control and more say in their creations.
yeah. I do also think that there is sort of a balance between like um, being sad about a thing that was canceled too early, but being happy that it was greenlit and that it existed,
Mhm, that it
even
existed
if it
at
was too
all.
beautiful to live.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and it lights a fire under you like, all right, I'm gonna make my thing now, and it's gonna be amazing, and I'm gonna make sure that it gets to tell its story, you know? It just lights that fire underneath you.
We had some questions in the chat that I think are worth asking. Carla asked, "How big is the team working on your pilot? And do you have any advice on how to apply to be part of a team like this?"
So, we've got, I think, about 70 people on our team right now. It's a very big team. And I am very lucky that we're all crazy and like to hang out and voice chats and just, work together and just have fun. It makes it a lot less intimidating. But if you're looking to apply, honestly, just having a very good cohesive portfolio that's easy to look through, present your absolute best work first. Make sure that you're not sending a Google Drive link with a bunch of files. Like, have it be a site or have it be a reel. It make because when we're hiring, and I know when a lot of people are hiring, we sometimes have to go through 200 applications in a few days, and we can only give everybody so much time. So being sure to present your absolute best work first and make sure everything is super easy to navigate, super easy for us to understand, like what we're looking for and what you're trying to show us is so, so important, because I have had to throw away applications before where I kept clicking and clicking and clicking through their site or looking through their email, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't find your reel. Like, it's nowhere on your site and links are broken." Like, I'm so sorry. I'm sure you're talented, but I can't spend, 10 minutes trying to find your work. So yeah, just best work forward. And it when it comes to my projects, resume and like work experience is probably one of the things that I look at last. The first thing that I'm always going to look at is just, is your like art good? Um, does it seem like you understand what I'm looking for? And then very, very last thing I'll look at is like a resume.
David the Gnome asked, "Why would you want to make a cartoon about hell?"
Well, thankfully, this cartoon is not about hell, despite the early name. It is about a girl and her weird, chaotic sparkle dog that is trying to mess up her life as she's trying to figure out life in the adult world and all of that. So we don't have any demons or hell or anything like that in this show, so you don't have to worry.
What was the most challenging aspect of creating an animated pilot?
Uh, is everything a bad answer?
They're not bad
It's
answers. They're just answers.
no, honestly, like there's a lot of aspects of it that are very, very difficult, but all in their own unique ways. But if I had to pick like the most difficult part, at least on our production, is just having the money to make sure our team is paid well and figuring out like how to make that funding. Like that's probably one of the biggest roadblocks that I see every production hit is we have to pay our team well. We want to pay them fairly, how do we do that? And so yeah, honestly, the biggest thing that you're gonna like face when you're trying to do something independently, unless you're doing everything yourself, is figuring out how to get money to pay your team. And I've known a lot of people that their answer to that is just to grind and work nonstop for years to save up the money for it. And we're a little bit crazy, and we're making the money for our pilot as we're producing it, because we like to live fast and loose apparently. And other than that, the one of the biggest hardest parts is learning how to be a good communicator to make sure that your team understands what you need of them and is comfortable and happy and isn't being overwhelmed and is able to do their job in the easiest best way possible.
What would you say inspires the like style and design of Far-Fetched, and what kinds of animation techniques are you using in your production?
So I was a huge, huge Danny Phantom fan when I was a little kid, and you can still see that through my work today. Like it's definitely just a kind of ingrained into the DNA of my work, and you can see a lot of influences from like anime and stuff like that because naturally DeviantArt Danny Phantom Kid transitions into anime kid very quickly. And so I've just taken a lot of those inspirations through my life and just injected it into the art style of the show. And initially, like you can see, I was trying to be a little bit more like cartoony and like Disney with my art style, but eventually I just kind of gave up, and I was just like, "Nah, let's make it super, like, anime and, like, fun and just go for, like, exactly what I just in my soul want, not what I feel like I'm supposed to do." And also, we're crazy and we like to suffer. So we're doing hand drawn frame by frame instead of any rigs or anything like that. And I know a lot of productions use rigs and stuff, and I'm dumb and haven't learned how to use rigged animation and anything like that. I've just stuck with what I know and also what I personally just enjoy seeing. I'm a huge fan of hand drawn frame by frame animation. And so I've just been moving forward with that. And to kind of help with that though, like we do try and like keep our frame rate reasonable. So you like know a lot of people know like animation is 24 frames per second, but that's not actually necessarily true. Like the playback speed is 24 frames per second, but the actual amount of drawings that you're probably seeing per second is closer to like 12, probably closer to 8 per second.
On
And
twos,
with
on
a lot of
threes?
yeah, on 2s, on 3s, like, if you can see in the timeline here, like, most of it is on 2s, but in the really quick motions, we do have it on 1s, which is 24 frames per second, and then when we get real slow, we have it on 3s here, and that's something that I've tried to, like, ingrain into my team. It's just, I know you want it to be pretty, I know you want it to be beautiful, but I value you and I need that hand of yours to help make more animation in the future. So don't die. Save on frames when you can, be economical with it. And it's been an interesting like balance to figure out so far. To try and make sure that everything looks as smooth as possible, even if the frame rate dips into being on threes, fours, etc.
And there's also the element too that sometimes adding more frames doesn't necessarily make it better,
No.
or you can have something that's really snappy and impactful, at a lower, frame
Mhm.
rate.
I mean, you see all the time those people who will take a piece of animation. It's like, now it's 60 frames per second.
Oh
Isn't it
god.
great? And everybody's like, yeah, it's beautiful. I'm like, no, stop. No, it looks horrible now. What'd you do? What did you do to it? All the life, all of the like precise intentional movement and flow from it is just sapped out of it. No, why?
60 frames a second.
Maid or Matey, however people choose to pronounce their name, is an excellent animator, and he's also on our team. and he is crazy and has done animation at 60 FPS and like 48 FPS, and everybody online is just like, "Oh, that looks so cool, dude. That looks great." And he's always just like, "It does. I did this for fun. Never do this. Never ever do this. Don't do it. It's a bad idea."
Do you have advice for other artists who are interested in making their own animated pilots?
My joke answer that I always want to lean towards is don't. But I don't genuinely mean that. It's a joke, I swear. But like making an animated pilot is one of the coolest and most fulfilling and most awesome things that I've gotten to do. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I will warn you, it is I've never been more stressed in my entire life. It's terrifying, especially if you're like working on getting your funding as you're going. Like it's a constant fear of like, oh no, is this going to fail? Is this going to manage to fund itself? Are we going to be able to complete it? All of that. And it's words cannot describe how massive of an undertaking it is, until you're just in it and you do it. And so it's really, really tempting to dive right in. But my advice for anybody is you can make your own animated pilot if you want to. Anyone can do it. And I am sure that there are a bunch of people out there that have amazing stories to tell, and I want to see them. Very much want to see them, but you don't have to do it right now. It doesn't have to happen right this second. Start small, start on like a web comic or start on like 1 minute long shorts, or even better, like 30-second shorts. And start with like maybe a team of you and a friend, and then you and maybe like two people, and just take it slow. It can wait. It doesn't have to exist this year, next year, or even the year after that, and you will have so much better of a final product in the end if you take the time to take things slow, build up your audience, build up the money that you'll need, and get that experience in storytelling that you're going to need when you dive into this pilot. Because as somebody who just went straight to a pilot, let me tell you, I know better than anyone that I should have started much smaller, and I'm very lucky that it has worked out as well as it has so far. But yeah,
So we've
like,
got some more
just go
questions from
for
the
it.
audience.
But just
We've got more
yeah, go
questions from
for
the
it.
audience, and I wanted to just run through them. You don't have to answer all of them. If you
Mm.
wanted to say no comment, you can. The first one is: do you plan on pitching this to a studio?
No, I do not at all. I want to maintain Me and my co-creator want to maintain complete creative control throughout the entire process, even if we feel like, whoever we sign on with will allow us to do whatever we want. Companies change hands all the time. New people buy out studios all the time. You never know what's going to happen. I'm not against pitching. And probably someday I will pitch shows to networks, but with this one, this is my baby. I want to be able to tell the exact story that I want to tell. And I've even gotten people offering to give me money to like help produce the show, but asterisks they want to be involved. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Like I can't do that. I'm very selective with who I allow to make changes to this.
So if like A24 shows up on your front doorstep with like a briefcase full of money, your
Uh-huh.
answer is this project is not for sale, but I have others.
Yeah, basically it's just like, I got a bunch of other ideas for you that I would love to give you, not this one.
How did you promote this project online, and how did you gain a following?
I just one of the biggest ways that we've been promoting this thing online is just by showing us doing it and showing us working on it, and like kind of showing the behind the scenes like process of how we've been making it, and also like live streaming it. And like one of the best ways as an artist to kind of promote your work I found is just show people that you're promoting your work, and collaborate with other online creators, and bring them on to talk to them, because people just online are very hungry to learn and like see how things work and how things develop. And also like we've been making comics and like a bunch of other little fun supplemental side content. And what was the other part of that question?
I think it was how do you gain a following? How do you gain an audience?
Honestly, it's a lot of luck, but putting stuff out there that you're really passionate about and really enjoy making, like draw art of things you love, just put yourself out there and eventually people recognize passion and people recognize genuine love for the things that you're making and they will be drawn to that. And but honestly, one of my biggest pieces of advice is don't worry about developing an audience. Like that's worry about making yourself happy and making things that you love and that you're happy with, and the audience will come naturally.
We got a question in the chat. How did you get your amazing voice casting? And I'm kind of curious if this might have come from one of the voice actors on your production.
I honestly, the majority of our cast just auditioned. Like, I was amazed at some of the people who auditioned. Like, there were some huge, huge, amazing names that auditioned for us that we ended up not having to go with because they just weren't quite the right fit. But the vast majority of them, yeah, just auditioned, and they're all incredibly wonderful, talented people. I am sure I know who they're referencing. My boyfriend Michael Kovac is an amazing voice actor, super talented, and knows every voice actor in the industry, it feels like. And so I'm sure him recommending the project helped quite a bit. But for Quinn, we got J. Michael Tatum, and honestly, that was just through a mutual friend who really was excited about Farfetch'd and happened to be good friends with him and was like, and I mentioned forever ago, like, "Oh, J. Michael would be the perfect fit for Quinn." And for months, he was chomping at the bit, like, "Hey, can I tell Jake Michael that you want him for this character? Can I tell him? Can I tell him?" I was like, "No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm scared." And so he pitched the project to J. Michael for me, and J. Michael was just instantly on board. But everybody else, we just auditioned, and so we cast them, and that's kind of the route that we wanna keep following is just having the option for anybody to audition be open. Like, because there are so many talented people out there that nobody's ever heard of, and I want to give them a platform and a chance to be involved.
One of the questions we have in the chat, how did you secure funding for this project? Was it through Kickstarter, Patreon, or any other means?
A lot of it has just been me taking the money that I get from, like, working on Animaniacs or, like, other shows that I've worked on and just immediately filtering it all into this. It's a lot of it is my personal money, especially early on. And so it started out that way, but now we are getting most of our funding through merch sales and Patreon, thankfully, because our fans are so incredible and supportive of this thing that doesn't even really fully exist yet. And I am still unbelievably grateful for that because if this was still all coming out of my pocket, I would never sleep. I would just be working 24/7 on like animation work and then working on Farfetched. And I know a lot of indie productions, that is how it is. It's the creator just working nonstop, making money to make their little project, like their little indie dreams real.
You mentioned we got a few questions about your art style, and you mentioned that your influences are like anime and Butch Hartman, sort of
Mhm.
a cross pollination between the two. How do you achieve that balance between very like design heavy, iconic characters and things that are a bit more detailed and anatomical?
I wish I could show it, because that was a huge issue that we tackled with a lot of our, like, creature and monster designs, is we want to keep them very animation friendly and very, like, have satisfying, like, good shape language, but also the problem with doing that is it then makes the characters look too friendly. It's just a natural part of simplification is you make stuff look a lot friendlier, and we don't want that with our monsters, obviously. So it's been a huge process of like figuring out what the exact right amount of detail is versus what the right amount of like simplification is. And a big part of that is just breaking down the characters into very, very easy to animate shapes, and then figuring out kind of like per shot what detail is necessary to emphasize and add. And at the end of the day, we've kind of figured out that no matter what, our creatures are just gonna kind of be a little bit of a pain to animate. But the end result, I think, is gonna be worth it in the end. And as for the main characters, it's just a lot of like figuring out what kind of shapes like work really well to portray like their character. Like Quinn has got a lot of like sharp angles and like a lot of sharper edges to his character design because he is kind of a jerk a little bit, and very, very edgy. But then on our main character, Rue, she's got a lot of like softer, rounder shapes. And so definitely experimenting with our shape language has been a huge part of the process in nailing everybody down.
All right, Ashley, this has been a blast. Is there anything else that you want to show off while we still have time?
I actually there was no good time to bring it up, but I actually have a lot of little pieces of concept art for future stuff that we're working on for everyone that wants to see it, and also some like background design stuff that I don't think we've shown off yet, and some little bits of animation and like layouts and stuff. But yeah, I'm we've got so much in the pipeline and it's very conflicting because we want to share absolutely everything we make because we're like, guys, look at this, look at it, see it, it's cool, isn't it? Like, because we love working on this just as much as I think our audience loves seeing it. And it's just it's so conflicting because we have to keep some stuff secret. So there are fun surprises later down the road. But then people are like, are you working on anything? Like, are you doing anything? I haven't seen anything in a while. I'm like, it exists. I swear. I promise. It's real. It's just we have to keep some stuff secret. I'm so sorry. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to show everybody more of what we got coming down the line for my little babies, me and Dave's little Babbo characters. They're gonna go through a lot of trauma and a lot of horrors, but it's okay. They'll be fine-ish, and I can't wait for everybody to see.
So, speaking of can't waiting for everybody to see, Ashley, where can our viewers find more of your work?
So you can find me on Twitter at Ash Nichols Art. You can also find my portfolio and like a bunch of other links to my various other social medias at ashleynicholsart.com. But mainly I just spend all of my day saying dumb stuff on Twitter. So if you want to get the most out of your Ashley experience, you can find me there at Ash Nichols Art.
And also be sure to take a look at the trailer for the pilot episode of Farfetched.
Yeah, that is just far-fetched on YouTube. We got a fun little teaser out, and we jokingly say that that is the most boring part of our pilot that we wanted to show everyone first. And so, yeah, look forward to more. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you to everyone for attending this week's live stream. If you're interested in animating characters of your own, you can download a 21-day trial of Harmony Premium at toonboom.com. And if you enjoyed this interview, be sure to tune in next week for a discussion with Tom Bancroft and Whitney Pollitt about the Mermaid Challenge. We'll be speaking with Tom about Mermaid's origin story, as well as Whitney's tips for wowing the judges in the official mermaid competition. If you want to make a splash with your mermaids, you won't want to miss it. Until next time.